We're here at the Commercial Hotel, which is closed to the public, but people are always asking about the commercial. And there's a few facts to clarify. It is not on the historic register, and it is not about to be torn down. But we want to share some history of the commercial. The commercial actually started in Elko's very first days as the Humboldt Lodging House right here on 4th Street in 1869. And it was this funky wooden structure. Everything was a wooden structure in Elko's early days. And then in the mid-1890s, it was sold and it was renamed the Commercial Hotel, which is the name it has still today in 2022. Long about the early 1900s, 1904 or 5 or so, the wooden structure was torn down and a brick building was constructed on this site. Since that time, there's probably been 4 or 5 additions to the hotel, and the brickwork and increased in size. Well, of course, during Prohibition times, which was from 1918 through 1934, there was no gambling formally, and there was no bar formally. However, I did an oral history many years ago with Shorty Migloretto, who came to Elko as a bricklayer when the Henderson Bank building was built in 1928. It was finished in 29. And after the bank was completed, he was a bartender at a speakeasy in the basement and told a few stories about raids going on and all sorts of exciting times that happened during Prohibition, which is a whole nother story in itself. Well, then Prohibition is rescinded in 1934, and gambling is legalized in the form that we in Nevada know it today in 1935 or 36. And the commercial reopened as a casino. Well, part of the interest, and there was a big flurry of activity nationwide once Prohibition was rescinded, to have people come in and attend bars and resume life as they'd known it before. So gambling is going, and there are table games and some slot machine games. And the owners of the commercial, the Crumley family, had connections to people in Hollywood, and I don't know how or why. So they invited some big name entertainers to travel to Elko for a limited period of time and perform. And these were the big name people of their time. So they had Ted Lewis, who this was part of the big band era, and Ted Lewis and his big band performed, and Eddie Peabody was another guy that performed, Sophie Tucker. These were the big names that people go to see concerts. Now, concerts weren't invented at that time. So this became a huge thing. They would be here for 2 or 3 weeks performing, and people came from Reno and Salt Lake and Boise all over to little old Elko to see these big, fancy, high-name entertainers that you could only see if you were going to, these were movie stars as well, if you went to a nightclub in some big city. Well, Reno decided, wow, that is a good idea. And they too started inviting big name entertainers, booking them over at Harrah's and Harold's Club to be there. And then Las Vegas also copied Elko's idea of inviting big name entertainers, and well, the rest is history. But remember that it was first developed in Elko, one of Elko's many firsts. And we were very successful in this, as well as other places. One interesting thing, Ann Nisbet remembers this, is when these big entertainers were here, part of the stipulation of their contract was they had to perform a free show for the high school kids over at the old high school auditorium over there at the high school complex. Well, that boomed and did well. And then in the 1940s, a man named Red Ellis, there's a picture of Red. Red was a hunter, and he bought the commercial and the Stockmans. He was partners. And he was a big hunter, hunted all over the world. And a friend of his was polar bear hunting up in northern Canada somewhere, and shot this bear and had it stuffed, and then realized, where am I going to put this thing? So he had him stuffed, this is in the mid-1950s, and had him on display with Red's permission here. And that kind of, the big polar bear, the white king, who is a big deal in the polar bear world, became the logo and the mascot for the commercial, which it is today. And you visit with people, and hundreds of little kids, thousands of little kids can remember being with their parents, driving down Highway 40, stopping at the commercial to have a bite to eat in either the wonderful coffee shop or at the brand room, which has Elko County brands all over the wall, and seeing this big stuffed polar bear in the middle of the commercial hotel. And the commercial has just always been a host. It hosted Rotary Club and Lions Club, and they would be host to, in the days when there used to be fashion shows, and ladies and little kids and everybody would sit around and watch fashion shows. And it really was a community center. And it's closed at the moment, but we still have hope and ambition that something will come along and revive the commercial, and it still will be a viable part of our community.